everyone. Welcome to Yin Radio TV. I'm your host, Hillary Raimo. Joining me tonight is my good friend and fellow co-creator in the world, Brandon Russ. He is the co-founder and co-creator of Spirit Tree Connections in Albany, New York. He has been on the path for a long time. I met him through various synchronistic events that have happened. He's a practitioner. He works on a series called Intuitive Development and Intuitive Learning. He works closely with indigo parents, helps work with soul path work with both men and women to help redefine and balance their responsibilities in this life and to find their greatest passion and to live that alive. What does that mean? We'll get into that in the next 2 hours, and he'll be talking all about what he does and sharing some of his gifts. What I see in Brandon is an extraordinary person who has an ability to intuitively balance his male and female aspects. And what does that mean? His energies are really defined very well. He has an ability to see that in other people. When I first met him, I immediately just kind of lit up in a smile and knew that I was in the presence of a very, very beautiful, good, kind person. I have worked with Brandon in co-creating some events here in Albany. He's a wonderful, fantastic, very supportive co-creator. So tonight we're going to talk about a couple things. I want to talk to Brandon about the art of conversation, and we're going to get into some of that. And I also want to talk to Brandon about not only what he does, but how he does it and how he encourages other people to do it. So if you're watching tonight, it's going to be a kind of an elusive, vague description of the show, but we're going to have a good time. We're going to talk about a lot of things, and I'm really excited he's here. Welcome, Brandon. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And actually, you kind of just summarized my entire life by saying that's slightly elusive and not, well-defined, but not specifically, it's defined yet undefined all at the same time. So
we might have a good definition by the end of the show. You also work as a consultant. You've helped companies regain their positive flow. We'll talk about what positive flow is.
Yes.
And what makes them great, defining what makes them great. You've facilitated management seminars and team creativity visions. And you have taught people how to approach the team and company concept as individuals that have something vested beyond a paycheck. So you have some experience in corporate training as well as individual spiritual training, meditation. You're also on iTunes with all these great recordings. And so I don't know. I just think you're doing great work. Is there anything I missed in that bio introduction that you'd like to share with me right off?
No, but it will come up, and then what will happen is you'll be like, how did you not work that in? And that's just what will happen. It's all good. But I'll tell you, it's, when you live the way that you feel that you need to, you become diverse. And when you feel that you have a passion in many different directions, you try and work them in. And from the outside, it looks eclectic. It looks almost unorganized. But internally, I know that, when I meet Hillary, guess what? I need to put on my radio hat. And when we start talking about doing a meditation on the side of a mountain, okay, let's go make that happen. There's things that when they present themselves intuitively, when you start kind of doing the intuitive living piece of it, when opportunities present themselves, they really kind of manifest in helping you be who you are. And that's a big deal. So whichever direction you want to go in first, we'll tie it all in together because it really is tied in. The corporate person actually was, at one time, if they're looking to use intuition in the corporate world, at one time they were an indigo. They had whether you want to define it by crystalline or whatever category you want, they grew up to then want to incorporate that there. So we're actually talking about the same person, just where they are in process. So again, from the outside, it looks like a whole bunch, but it's really the same. It's the same effort, no matter where.
Yeah, and it's a relevant concept because what we're talking about in the world today, a lot of the things that I discuss on my shows and other platforms is the ability to be able to go kind of on the inside of the very structures that we want to change or see change happen within. And somebody like you is kind of like the one that goes, like the Troy horse that kind of goes into the corporate world,
right?
Stirs things up a little bit and gets people to change their perspective out and unlearn, well, not necessarily unlearn completely, but to rework and reweave the corporate mindset.
You bring up a great thing to this because that was actually a really big inspiration for me. We remember the Occupy Wall Street movement.
I was there.
What's that?
I was there. I was in the square.
And thank goodness you were, because again, Hillary, I've said it before, I'll say it again, you're an inspiration, so keep going. And that to me is actually, that was something that I was sitting up here in Albany and I was saying, I love what they're doing. I thought it to be incredibly valuable. I thought it was a very powerful statement, but that's not my style. My style was maybe more to infiltrate, if you want to use that word, but to be able to kind of step into it and actually change it from within. Because when you think about the dynamics of like personal change, it always starts from within. You may have factors on the outside that you maybe can't have a boundary for anymore and you have to react to it. But when you really want to change yourself, whether it's in addiction recovery, whether it's in personal performance, whatever it is, you have to start from the inside. So, the corporate environment really, it's a top-down philosophy, but, they always talk about things like, people are our greatest asset. You hear that all the time. It's cliche. It's a quick band-aid to make employees feel good and, feel retained and everything else. Well, I spent 15 years in the recruiting industry. It's a $500 billion a year industry. And it is that for this reason. People are unhappy in their role. They're personally unhappy. They never really actually get to where they get personal satisfaction out of it, because they replace one thing with another thing that doesn't work for them, because they've never actually done anything internal to say, this is why I want to change. I mean, if you're broken, you continuously attract broken situations. Mm-hmm. So, there's many industries. The recruiting industry is just one of them that thrives off of it. So.
Yeah, I met a shaman once who said that to me. In fact, I did a show with John Perkins, interestingly. Sure. John was a whistleblower of sorts. He was an economic hitman. He would go into these third world countries and sell the big dream of getting hooked up to electricity and other sorts of modern day conveniences. And in return, the country would go into debt and owe the World Bank or other institutions great deals of money. Right. And that become indebted and enslaved within the system.
I'm sorry, Hillary.
When he came out of it, just one second, when he came out of it, he became a whistleblower, and he had started to learn from the indigenous cultures that he was trying to infiltrate, and realized that he had a heart awakening and realized that he was doing the wrong thing, and jumped on the other side and realized that part of his mission then became the expose, exposing the atrocities of that system. Absolutely. And one of the most things, the things that he said to me that I remember the most happened to be just that, to shamanize something from within, to go into the corporate structure. You can go into a boardroom dressed in a suit and be just as effective as if you were standing around, dancing around a fire with your rattle, doing those kinds of things. Right. And so it became a shape-shifting energy. Do you feel like when you go into these different places, when you go into the corporate places, you're kind of shape-shifting the energy and waking people up? Or would you describe it in a different way?
Well, I think that there's certainly parts of that. And it's funny, for a second, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it almost sounded like you were talking about like our game with college, where we go into this massive debt. It sounds exactly this. Everything you were saying was almost exact to what people go through when they're, between 18 and 23, when you're going to college and you come out and you're like, hey, great, you've got this degree, but you just gave away your soul because you're 50K in debt, or, insert number here. It's the exact same equation. It's just where it's played. But in the corporate environment, it's interesting. I'm working with a client right now that they were reluctantly open, but they knew that they were in a position that they really needed to change. So, since I have a background with, system implementation and organizational management, that's my background, kind of in the corporate world. And, the whole human resources aspect of it, they really needed to kind of change how they were doing things. Well, the bigger topic for them was how afraid they were for change. And the initial kickoff meeting, if you want to call it that, I came in and I didn't have a handout and I didn't bring donuts. And both of those things were not well received. They literally, I went in there and
they wanted the donuts, Brandon.
I know, right? I've given up donuts.
The meeting, they get out of work for however long, they want the donuts.
Well, the ironic thing was that I went a half hour over the planned time, and they were upset that I was taking up their time. So then I realized that I was going to be a scapegoat soon enough. But you do that. I mean, part of it's not intentional concealment. It's just they want this to look in a certain way. They actually want to be billed for the lesson that they're about to learn. They want you to look in a certain way so that then they feel comfortable with whatever that's coming in. And what I'm beginning to find is that, okay, fine, in the boardroom, it looks a certain way. But then when you get behind closed doors, they're really struggling. They're really like, listen, I almost feel like I'm stealing from this place. I don't feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And then part of that is reconciling who they are within that seat and finding some happiness. And sometimes it's going outside and being able to be like, okay, I'm going to have a creative pursuit. They played music for years and then they decided they needed to give that up for whatever role purpose it is that they're in. And then they incorporate that a little bit and all of a sudden their performance at work goes up. And that's not actually, it's not spoken about in companies, in corporate America. It's almost like I've actually spoken to some people that work for creative companies, advertising companies. You would assume that they have creative ventures all the time. And it's not actually even encouraged. It's just like, oh, you did that? Oh, well, you put out an album or you made a movie or whatever the case may be. And they kind of shrug their shoulders and go, okay, all right, congratulations. Meanwhile, there's supposed to be a creative environment that should celebrate it.
Now, what do you think is the reason for that? Why do you think that they don't really care about that aspect? What's your take? I have my take. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think it has a lot more to do with what, when companies are expanded humans on a mission, whether you look at it from the standpoint of, that it's the sum of the parts, or you still got a figurehead at the top that said, this is the reason why we're in business. And the intrinsic reason to be in business is to make money. We need to make money so we can keep doing whatever it is we're doing. And one of the things that I think that is probably the most telling piece of that has more to do with whether or not the intention of the company is to really provide what they're doing. You could be building widgets or you could be, I don't care what the business is, but if your intention actually fits into the modality to help people be who they're supposed to be, that is such a huge difference. And you might not be able to control what goes on with the client. I mean, a client is going to pay you money because they want whatever service. I'm not responsible for what that client wants out of me at the end of the day. What their perception is isn't my responsibility. What they may actually be looking for, though, is for me to change them in a way that I might be the scapegoat at the end of the day, but that's my mission with that. I'm okay if I leave on whatever terms it is, then they leave with their perspective changed to be like, he made us think that, we shouldn't be about donuts, even if that's their only takeaway. So be it. But the other challenges that I really kind of bring in is, take a deep breath. You just absorbed a whole bunch of information. Listen to yourself for a second. What's the first thing that bubbles up? What's the thing that continuously bubbles up as you think of this topic, whatever the topic is? And then that has a lot to do with the intuition, and whether it's taught or not, that's the key thing. I mean, this is when you start talking intuition, people just get frightened. I mean, I shouldn't say all people. Certain people get frightened by that. But if they really do that, they'll grab onto it and say, see, I told you, So even in their own sense, they want intuition, but they want it just to be able to, do the I told you so and not really grow and live with it.
They want to be right.
Yeah, so it's their what? Ego.
Right. I'm right, you're wrong. The whole corporate structure, as far as I'm concerned, and you can sum this up, is built on a competitive structure.
Yep,
it's not a creative structure, it's a competitive structure.
Yep.
And we're taught to be competitive from the time we come out of the womb. Oh, your weight is a little bit off the scale. You're not with the rest. I mean, everything all the way from being a newborn child to a grown adult has to do with the cultural programming aligned with the competitive nature. Corporate structure is the epitome of competitive nature.
Right.
And I think what you're doing is going into these structures and changing that from being competitive to co-creative. And co-creative is a much different thing, a much different model. It's a completely different mind space. It puts you into your intuition, and intuition is about synchronicity. It is about connection. It is about conversation. It is about it being an art versus a competition. And I really, I mean, I've worked within the corporate structure myself, and I've seen it myself, and I've gone into the boardroom and I've been like, okay.
Yeah.
And there are ways to incorporate everything that you talk about into what, makes that a better kind of fertile space. But then do they all go back to their cubicle? And does it slow drip down into the rest? Maybe. Of course,
Maybe.
I believe it does. However, I don't know if it always does necessarily. And so the problem then becomes unlearning the corporate structure, unlearning the competitive nature, unlearning the critical type,
right.
I don't know, mindset. It's an unsustainable consciousness is what it really comes down to. And you're going in and creating a more sustainable consciousness by introducing different concepts into that work environment that allow that to be nurtured and cultured. What was your hardest, your most, when you first started it, what did you find was your most challenging aspect within these mindsets that you're walking into within the corporate world? What was your biggest hurdle to get over first?
Well, it's still, it's not show friends, it's show business. So you still have to have some business acumen to that. And there's such a conversation about fiscal responsibility. I mean, our relationship with money is a big deal, both on a personal level and as a business. And when businesses, they think that how they gauge success actually has to change. If you're a publicly traded company, the only thing that matters is how much your shares are going for. So we can get into a whole conversation about how they're manipulated and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, in a free market and how it's truly working, if performance equals a certain dollar amount and you're essentially working for other people that you'll never meet and all of that other stuff. The biggest challenges that I think really come into this is to embrace that you can make money and not necessarily and still do good work. And it's because we're not taught to necessarily do good work and always have that be, well, you're a nice guy, thanks for coming, nice guys finish last, whatever stigma that's attached to that. It really then becomes part of the conversation that, the CEO and the CFO and the board of directors have to sit down and say, well, what's our real mission here? Are we here just to make money? If that's the case, I might not be a good hire for you. I mean, I'll be more than happy to teach you intuition. And if you're going to go ahead and use that to catch your employees surfing, the net and stealing from you, that's, okay, great. But by and large, if they're really looking for it in a bigger sense, what they really incorporate with that is they take a hard look at what the relationship is with money. And I do that on a personal level too, because, if all those conditioning things that you had talked about is very key, because a lot of people never look at that. They just come out and they think, well, I work 50 hours a week. I make this much dollar amount. When I was in recruiting, one of my favorite things I used to say, and I would catch a person a day saying this, and they would call me and they'd say, hey, listen, I'm searching for a position. I'm like, okay, well, what are you looking for? What are you searching for? And they would say, well, I'm worth at least $75,000. And I would laugh. I go, that's it? That's all you're worth? And the dynamic of their attitude would change, because then they would be like, am I really a dollar amount? It was the first time that maybe they had ever looked at themselves as, they finally caught themselves saying what I was hearing, which was, you're devaluing yourself. I bring so much more. There's intangibles to me. There's passionate things. They were only talking about their performance merits coming into it, and what a market value is that's arbitrary anyways. And at the end of the day, a person's value, the reason why people stay in companies is because they value so much more than what the paycheck is. And that's the part where, board of directors and things like that really sit up and they listen. They go, oh, wait a minute. So there is impact to the bottom line, where if you want to put the dollar and cents spin on it, you're not spending money on recruiting, or maybe you're paying $70,000 instead of $75,000 because the person is more whole and they're happy doing what they're doing because you've connected it to a mission, or whatever minute change it is. It allows for companies that feel it from the inside out. But you still got to speak to the bottom line. And that's, in my path, I think I was kind of gifted to still be able to talk about that and find it within it. It's not the big return that they might have thought of, but it still exists for a lot of, in ways that they can get a good night's sleep too. So.
Yeah, hopefully. Brandon's website, if you're watching this and you'd like to check out more information about him, his work, you can go to spirittreeconnections.com. Brandon, one of the things that I feel when you're talking about all of this is a really, really loud call to change the corporate structure. I don't think we're going to see real big change on this planet until we see a change in the corporate structure. International law, international business, it's all a different world. And unless you're really schooled in contractual language and you know what you're talking about when it comes to these things, the ordinary, everyday, average person does not have the amount of information and know-how and awareness of what's going on to really understand how it's so complicated and entangled.
Yeah.
I think nature, the planet itself as a natural entity, is struggling because what's really causing her so much pain is the corporate structure. It's not ISIS, it's not terrorism, it's not Hollywood necessarily, but they're all kind of tied into that stuff.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it all leads back to being about corporate sabotage, companies going after each other, that kind of stuff. And often it feels like it's kind of out of the hands of the ordinary person. I mean, literally it is, but it also feels very big, like very far away. What can a little person do to affect these kinds of things? So what would your advice be to the David and Goliath situation? Without throwing stones, right? Maybe. How do you describe that to people, or how do you feel about that? What do you think about that whole?
That's actually a common question, believe it or not. It's like, well, what am I going to do? It's the way it is, and it's the way it's set up, and I'm afraid, and all those things. In every one of the series that I teach, whether it's intuitive development, intuitive living, it's a big topic. With indigo children and their parents, it's also something very big. I mean, there's enemies of the empath, which, I call it the enemies of the empath, and it's one of the few times that I actually use a negative word like enemy. And it's, enemies of the empath are the way it is, the way that the world is. So you just put up with it and you suck it up, buttercup, and you go about your work, and you deny whatever your intuition is giving you for survival. You're in survival mode. One of the other, enemies of the empath is fear. It's a big deal. I mean, fear, all those things that you just listed. Hollywood just generates fear on a continuous basis. I mean, it does some good work too. It does some kind of profound. They're able to sneak one by the powers to be and, have some sort of profound delivery dynamic of intuitive proportion, I should say. And then, corporate entities, all those things are really kind of structured. Think about the life cycle of a normal person in the United States. They go to school, they're taught to perform. I mean, you can get into the conversation about Common Core, about how it's not actually teaching critical thinking anymore. It's actually teaching, to be able to be conditioned into whatever it is that they tell you. They're testing, what they're really testing us is, are you willing to put up with whatever we tell you? I mean, that's what Common Core is at the end of the day from a teaching style. Then you get out of that and then you go on to college, and then you go into this tremendous amount of debt, or your parents somehow are able to help you, for that. And then they didn't enjoy their life because they were sacrificing for you, or whatever the case may be. And then you come out and then you get into this performance mode, and you want to get in with a good company. And then, the gold watch is gone. So you jump around from one company to another to try and find a bigger fish to fry. And before you know it, you've done all of these things to serve whatever that intrinsic thing is. And that is the fear of, well, what if I'm not successful? What if I'm not, what if I lose my house? What if I, all these things that instead of right-sizing for what you need, you're so worried about somebody else's standard. And creating your own standard starts very much at the top, and it starts very much at the cellular level, whether it's a person in a company or a person in a boardroom. To create your own standard, to say these are the things that I'm just not going to be negotiable on. I'm not going to cut down a rainforest for a couple of bucks, and that's an extreme situation, but it comes down to the little things like, believe it or not, when you start living where everybody kind of has their own standard, in workplaces, you see you see things like the cattiness go away naturally. So then HR doesn't have to do as much work, or, you actually get more performance out of that. You also see like clients and customers being able to interact in a way that is a little more natural, like, because they don't have to hide that what they're doing isn't the best thing for the client. It's a trickle down conversation because it affects one thing to another. It's not even trickle down, it's more ripple, because it keeps going until it reaches all the destinations. So
yeah,
it's a different point of view.
Yeah, and it's an important point of view. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's one of those things where I guess, you get comfortable in the non-sell. You're not selling anything.
Right.
I think that's a big thing. And even in ordinary everyday conversations, now taking it out of the corporate structure and putting it into the personal structure.
Right.
If you're not selling yourself as something to another person, then you have an ability to have more of an authentic conversation.
Right.
And in that authenticity then opens up different doorways and pathways into what I call the magic realm, which is the synchronicities. We've all had those conversations where we go, wow, that's why I'm supposed to meet you, because I'm supposed to get that message to go do whatever, fill in the blank. And if we're not in that space where we're being authentic ourselves and it's not being reciprocated, then I don't think that magic realm actually creates the way it should. And I think that the art of conversation has to do with that. It has to do with showing up and not being about being perfect, but about being present. And if you're present, yes, you're not thinking about, what does that person think of me? You're not thinking about a facade to put out there so that a person thinks certain things. I see a deconstruction needed on some levels, because everything we just talked about with the corporate world can be kind of transplanted over to the social world. Because it's all just the same construct, it's just a different element of it. And because we've been so hardwired to really, be that competitive thinker, be that, striver to have and to be more, we're always comparing ourselves. And when we stop the comparing, then all of a sudden the mist clears and the veils lift and everybody goes, okay. And there's a little aha moment there. I want you to share a little bit with the audience about your aha moment when you first started to realize who you are. And not everybody wakes up and goes, okay, I'm going to get on TV, radio, and talk about this and be a spiritual person and go be a healer. There's always a moment. There's a story. There's a before-after moment where you go from, what was yours?
Yeah, I say this all the time, the difference between a breakthrough and a breakdown is your preparation and perspective. And when I'm working with individuals, it tends to be, you see what they're ready for, and sometimes that facilitation, sometimes it's a breakdown, sometimes it's during a meditation where they connect with what they needed to connect and they saw what they needed to see. And then other times it's, kind of through this talk therapy, it's being able to, do this art of conversation and allow them to get to their conclusions, because I can tell you what it is that it should be, but that's not who you are. So you have to get yourself there. And a really super profound thing, in my path, I've held a couple of titles. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek because I was really, again, from the outside, it looks like, oh my gosh, this is a cluster and this guy changes every 3 months and that sort of thing. And it's really just finding the groove of like where this is. And I was carrying the moniker of psychic for some time, and I was doing quite well with it. I was doing what, the psychic world, how someone becomes immersed within it is, you do some events, you get connected, and you go do home parties, and you get, and you do subtle events and all these things that, what I recognized was that I was just foregoing, the corporate business model for another corporate business model, just in a different setting with different tools. And I was still, when I was able to kind of draw it back, and I said, my intuition and my mediumship are tools, whether I use them in a corporate environment, one-on-one for counseling, whatever the case may be, that's what's more important, and for me, the psychic piece of it didn't really work because what I was finding and what I was attracting just wasn't what I wanted to be doing.
What were you attracting? If you don't mind me asking, what was happening specifically? What were you attracting?
I was attracting people that wanted to give their power away. And that just didn't work for me. It was people that were saying, I'm broken, but, fix me, or this person's no good in my life. Should I leave him or shouldn't I? And I'm like, to me, that was them. The guidance that I wanted to give them is, what you really should be doing? I'm sensing that you have this gift and let's build on that. And, they would walk away being like, this isn't anything that I've ever seen. So my feedback was actually very true. And they'd say like, there's nothing like you, but it's not what I expected, but that doesn't mean that it was bad. And that helped me move along. And one particular reading that I did, and this is many years ago, and it was life-changing to me. And this is when I knew, we all have things. You're calling it an aha moment. I'm calling it validation mile marks. I had a woman come to me who was stage 4 cancer. And when you have that, when you do this work, it's pretty imminent what's kind of going to go down with this. You can talk about where they are in this life, what's happening, but it's she has a terminal disease. She had a date. Well, her profound question to me was, who am I supposed to help when I pass? When I cross over, what's my work? The recruiter that's placed literally thousands of people over a career. Yeah. So, I had nothing to say. I don't know what that work is supposed to be. And then we started talking about it, and I began to understand perfectly well what that work was supposed to be. And that's when I began to kind of see this on the other side, where this material stuff really doesn't matter. It's essential, don't get me wrong, because we are still in this life and we still need to keep the lights on and all that other stuff. However, she gave me the insight of being able to say, there's something more to this, and she challenged me. Like, for that moment, I was like, these are the types of people I want to be around. I'm happy to say that was over 5 years ago, and she's still doing well.
So your breakthrough moment, if I understand you correctly, was that moment where you realized you're kind of a midwife of crossing people over from that old story to the new story.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. I mean, it's, to facilitate change. And think about it this way. She's, her situation, she's looking to have her packaging retire. Essentially that's what's going on. The soul continues. How about if I get them earlier in life, like, say 43 or whatever, that age is when they're ready to make a change, and let's create another version of you. Like the game's not over yet. And it's, for me, it's the ability to say, well, what are those passions? Those passions are there for a reason. If that's meant to draw you out for a new experience or a new relationship or a new dynamic that then you can bring to the table for the other things that you do, that's a rebirth in and of itself. I talk about this all the time, to become the best version of yourself. I personally think I'm in 3.0. I think 4.0 can come around at any time. But as for right now, I got to get used to 3.0. I got some clay to work with. And it's really something that when you look at who you are and who you want to be, you've got to go through the transition. And, whether you talk about a physical body or just who you are and what you want to do, it's all part of it.
Yeah. Who was your greatest mentor when you were going through that? Who was the one that inspired you through that? Whether it be a real person or a force or...
Well, I think it's, I have to say this on a couple of, I had a bunch of mentors that some did very well by me, and some they disappointed me a little bit, but part of that disappointment was the lesson attached to it. Mm-hmm. And even when I look at like when I left the corporate world, everybody called me crazy, but my wife. My wife was kind of like, hey, you know what? You got this ability. Go ahead and do it. She had a couple of rules. She's like, you got to pay the bills and you got to be happy, and not necessarily in that order. And when I really kind of recognized that those were the things, like she just prodded, she was just like, okay, you're going to keep doing this, or are you going to, she would seem to be unhappy doing a contract or something like that and be like, you got to change the game. There's something else to this. So, she was a big influence. And that's when I really got into reading. I think most people in this journey, I started to recognize, and that's where the seedlings of what Spirit Tree became it was what I was looking for when I was developing. I needed somebody to talk to about intuition and, having the, whether it's the simple things of I knew what they were telling me wasn't there, and I just needed that validation that somebody else had been through that. Maybe it's just that simple. But then I also wanted a space where I could really kind of learn it and work the clay, so to speak. So.
Now, what's your vision with Spirit Tree Connections? Where do you see it headed? I know, and for people who don't know, who are just meeting you for the first time or hearing about your ventures, what was the vision of it? I know it brings people together. It's a container. You have different workshops. You have different presenters. You have people. It's kind of like a home base. You created a home base where everybody can come in, do their gifts, offer their offerings, and then go about their ways and come back when it's necessary or when it's time. Did you see yourself owning a center and doing that kind of stuff? Did you have that vision in your awakening moment? Like, I'm going to go do a center.
If you told me that this is what I would be doing 10 years ago, I would have told you were absolutely crazy. 5 years ago, I'd say, I got some work to do. When I really sat down and I looked at what I was good at, the networking, identifying what people's talents are, understanding their path, helping them, being positive. I mean, those are all things that I've just intrinsically had my whole life. And then the gift of gab, by the way, or art of conversation, any way you want to say it. But for me, with Spirit Tree, it's a group of practitioners that work within energy in different modalities. And again, what I found early in this journey is that I'd come in and I'd do a reading and then I'd leave. And then I would kind of hang on getting an email from them, not even for validation, but more so in just, are they okay? Like I was genuinely concerned for them. I'm an empath too. So my connection to them started on that day. And having that networking ability and really kind of beginning to connect with people and piecing it together and finding these just amazing people that they were really good at maybe just one thing. And I started to recognize that, maybe something that Lauren had, then Tony could utilize. And, Tony's really good at this and she could help Heidi. And Heidi's really good at this and could help, Gloria. And then I would see my vision with, working with Lisa. And then I'd meet Hillary and I'd say, oh my gosh, I remember Hillary. Hillary, why don't you come in and talk to us about this? And then, all of these things would then kind of come together. And before you know it, it just creates this ball of energy. It's a ton of positive energy that helps one another. And it helps you get and be the version of you that you want to be, where at each one of these events, it's okay. Instead of following Hillary forever, it's Hillary gave me this. I'm going to take this and honor her anywhere I go. And it's a healthier relationship. You see a lot of people giving themselves away. I heard this all the time. Oh, Brandon, you got to build your camp of following and that sort of thing. And I'm like, that was not me at all. Like, I didn't want to create a cult. I didn't want to create something that I couldn't return on. And I know you've talked about this from time to time too, but it's, to me, it was something where if it became mutually beneficial, then everybody won out of it. So how about that for competitive?
I know, right? It's
right?
I mean, but what you do, and the reason I ask you that question is because it gives people an opportunity to see the difference. I mean, what you've done is you've aligned a team together of people who function well together and complement each other instead of compete.
Yep.
And it creates kind of it creates a powerful environment that kind of allows whoever comes into it to, okay, I can breathe, I can trust this space, I can open up here. And that's always much more conducive for any kind of healing for everybody than it is, than other things. I mean, I've seen you do it. I know you can do it. I know you have a model for doing it. And, it's great, Brandon. So, I mean, your vision going, I know what I wanted to ask you first before we go into that. I was like, where did that question go?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did I start talking? I'm sorry. That's true to form.
No, well, I'm curious about this. Okay. Most men don't grow up saying, I'm an intuitive and I'm an empath. It's something I think women have an easier time of coming out of their shell and saying that. because when parenting, I think also when you become a parent, especially, I mean, I can speak for myself. I have 2 kids, and as a mother, when I see, like, you know, when I know something's going on, it's comes through in an intuitive sense, more so than it does factual information or present me these. And how was it for you growing up as an empath, being a male? Talk to us about that. Tell us what that was all about. How was that for you? When did you realize it was okay to come out and say, I'm an intuitive and an empath? I know that's a big deal.
It's, you know, I've got a ton of funny stories out of that, but you know, in a nutshell, I think that you also hit the nail on the head with some of my struggle as well as I was developing, because I didn't have another role model. I mean, John Edwards is fantastic at what he does. And there's other males, don't get me wrong, but it's such a limited view and scope. And by the way, they tend to be a little more competitive, and they're all very good though. But for me growing up, I mean, here I am complimenting my mom. You know, she kept me open. I mean, she challenged me like that. I had an aunt who always her Christmas gifts always spoke to my intuition. And they were always like, I'll never forget it. I got The Artist Way, which is a very popular book with, you know, writing intuitively and just exercising that. And her intuition said, I should get this book for my nephew. And I'll never forget it. I opened it and I was like, a book. And, you know, I throw it into the air. And then, you know, a couple of months later, I came across it and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I guess I'll read that. I felt intellectual for a day. So I'm like, oh, I'll read a page. And before I knew it, I'd been...
How old were you when that happened?
12, 13. I mean, you know, okay. So for me, it was, you know, little things like that along in the journey. And I would have moments of just profound, you know, gift. I mean, we went away on vacation and we were at the Cape. And we were in one of those setups where there were a lot of families. So there were a lot of kids, you know, a few years younger, older, but there was about 15, you know, kids all about the same age. And we're all kind of hanging out on the road. And I went through and I said all of their middle names. I just met them. I mean, we were from all over the country, or at least the Northeast. And I went through and I'm like, you know, Elizabeth and Diane and, you know, Joseph and John and Peter. And I was just, and they're all looking at each other going, well, how do you know my middle name? You just met me. And my sister, of course, starts laughing and say, this is why nobody will hang out with us. Like, quit doing this. You know, but for me,
I have no friends, Brandon.
Yeah, I know. It's such a problem for me.
That's what she said. Nice sister, thanks.
Right, but that was also something for me that as you kind of develop your dictionary and meaning, you know, I started to recognize, like, I'm recognizing people by their middle name. And I didn't realize it at the time, but then when I went on to do readings, or I'd sit with somebody in intuition to identify somebody, I would actually get their middle name. And sometimes it's a little more vague, sometimes it's super, you know, specific, especially if it's like a family name handed down or whatever. So it's, you know, even in my own development, it was there. But I do also talk a little bit about the different energy planes and going from male to female energy planes and then moving up to spiritual energy planes. For men, it's a natural, our physical self, it's actually a little more difficult, you know, for that. I'm not saying that you can't do it. It's not.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because male energy tends to be a little more earthful. It's a little more survivalist. It's a little more, you know, let's go back to the cave. It's a little more primal, if you will. And in order to kind of elevate that, you need something to nurture, you know, the nurture aspects of feminine divine, if you want to call it, where you begin to really kind of touch on nurturing. I mean, for me, it was, you know, my wife and I adopted children. And we had them since the day they were born. And I was at home. I was with them. You know, I was changing every diaper. I was, you know, up in the middle of the night. I was doing all of the nurturing pieces to it. And quite frankly, that was the difference between doing this and really doing this. Like, I had it and I had the ability and I could kind of work the clay. And then through the exhaustion, which, by the way, any child rearing will always give you exhaustion at some point. That's important to the process. But on the other side of that, once I got my legs underneath me, I was wide open because I understood the different energy planes. And it, you know, and of course, if you draw it down on the lines, you know, male energy is the first level, female energy is the second level. The next level is spiritual energy, and then the highest level, which is creator energy. And that, for me, that's also the premise of 1111 that we see so often, and that sort of thing. So it's, I came out of that realizing some things that would impact me longer term too. So I'm kind of okay with being a guy in all of this, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, the reason I ask is because, we go back to the societal structure. We have this structure set up pretty much where men go out and make the money, and they have to be, it's kind of a macho thing. I mean, at least in the United States. I mean, other countries don't necessarily have this structure.
Yep.
But I think overall, planetary wise, we deal with an out of balance type feminine energy within men.
Yep.
That is the intuition, is the divine understanding, is kind of, and I don't know really how to fix that. It's like we can talk about it till we're blue in the face. We can write thousands and millions of books on it and, do workshops and all kinds of stuff. But what it comes down to is men feeling comfortable in their own skin to be able to even discuss or communicate their abilities to be psychic or intuitive, and to have that kind of connection. I think that's what it comes down to with the feminine energies with men.
Well, full circle conversation. What are most corporations?
What are most corporations?
What are they filled with?
Men.
What is business? It's male energy.
Male energy, patriarchal energy. So, I have a friend of mine who's on the board of executives for IBM, and she goes into the boardroom and she studies shamanism outside of work, and she's not allowed to talk about any of this stuff. She goes in and she loses her job. But she has said to me several times over the years that she wishes that she could, but she's gotten very, very good at incorporating that energy into her work, just like you were talking about earlier. And, shape-shifting into that and moving into that in whatever way, she needs to. But, she says the men never talk about it. The men don't talk about it. Right. Even her friends outside of work don't talk about it. It's not something, because they're just so afraid of being shunned and being, losing their job over things like that. And then taking it out of the corporate context. Yep. You have teenagers that go to high school and don't want to talk about it to their friends because they don't want to be shunned. You have grown adults and children, and they're all dealing with it in different ways. Now you have an indigo parenting workshop coming up. Yeah.
I was just going to say, keep going.
And so when you go into these teaching formats, how do you talk about this subject to the people, the participants, or the people that are taking these kinds of workshops?
Well, it's being able to define the parenting roles that are attached. And one of the first things that we always talk about in indigo parenting is what their expectations are, because that's really super important to what their actions typically are. If a dad holds a son and says, I want you to be the shortstop for the Yankees and nothing else will be, if you end up on the Red Sox, then, that's no good. It's got to be the Yankees, or, whatever that expectation is. I don't mean to divide the room so quickly, but, it's all good. But, the conversation becomes about expectations, because one of the things about parenting is that, you end up parenting to what your perspective always is. And if you're holding on to things, if you're not willing to accept some losses and some of that, I mean, when you have a parent of a child that is gay, I mean, this has been a big kind of push over the last 10 or 15 years where, we are free to talk about this now. It is becoming socially acceptable. I mean, so, as much as, the talk of blue in the face part of it comes in, I think we've made strides in a lot of ways. But then talking to those parents, being able to say to them, the biggest thing that makes it quote unquote wrong is your expectation. Now, you might have gotten this from a Bible. You might have gotten this because your parents said it was wrong, or you may just have some sort of fear because you don't understand it. But this isn't on them. The fact that they are what they are doesn't necessarily affect you except for your expectations. Mm-hmm. Same thing with indigos, to kind of, then simplify it into this, the expectation of, I just want them to be happy. I hear that a lot. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Well, they could be perfectly happy living in a rail yard and catching the next, next train out of here to Buffalo. and consider that happiness. And then all of a sudden they go, well, no, that's not really happy. So what are your expectations of them? And in Indigo Parenting class, we actually talk about the roles, and we really break it down to chakras where, the root chakra is your responsibility, and it really affects the sacral. So how safe they are in their home, how free they are to not necessarily quell who they are, but explore it. But they still need rules. That doesn't mean that you're raising a bunch of freelancers that come in at, 2:00 in the morning all the time at, 15. They still need rules. And those rules will help them make better decisions into their sacral in the family that they create, and that they'll be able to be rational and say, this is a good person for me, or these are good decisions for me. That's really, when it comes down to parenting within an Indigo, that's it. Because the third eye and the crown chakra, they've got that covered. They were born with that. That's on another energy plane. Then the battlefield really becomes between the intuition of what they're getting within their solar plexus and kind of working into the decisions that they make as a throat chakra, whether they, protect themselves, whether they create boundaries, how they use their voice, all of those things, the actions that they then take, then really kind of become how the heart gets affected. And that's why we have so many grown-up indigos that are so closed, because they weren't willing to say things. They weren't really willing to talk about things. Mm-hmm. A teenager that won't say, you know what, I get this feeling. I feel this way when I'm in a certain situation, or I'm, and this is like the third rail of conversation with this. I'm hearing a voice. I'm hearing validation that this is coming or this is about to happen. You say, I hear a voice to a doctor, and you're on 14 meds before you walk out of there, right? So they're afraid to say it.
At least over vaccinated. Yeah, I get it. I get it. And you know what else I wanted to say just to that part of it, mm-hmm. is it really is the parents. You can have an indigo child, and you can see an indigo child raised by parents who absolutely are terrified of everything indigo. Yep. And then you can have an indigo child who's raised by parents who are understanding and open to what that means. And the difference between the child and the way the child is able to grow and to be able to express itself are just amazingly different.
It's night and day. I mean, the best word that I'll use with that is well-adjusted. They may be indigo, and you might, their social situations are, they protect, and maybe they don't hang out till 2:00 in the morning, and maybe they do things that are maybe beyond their years or very mature for their age. I hear that all the time. And what it really kind of comes down to is it's actually a compliment to the parents that they were allowing that to happen. And it's a balance. You've got the, dynamic where in the Carl Jung method, or philosophy rather, when you look at like the parent-child model, that over time you become more adult instead of parent-child, it starts off a little bit closer to adult than what they're comfortable with. They think they have to kind of provide for them all of the coaching, and then they call them a precocious 5-year-old because they're able to do things that the 12-year-old can't do, or whatever the case may be. But they don't know what to do with it. They don't recognize it, and they're not able to encourage it necessarily. And that's actually why all of these things, Spiritry in a nutshell, is all the things that we looked for, all of the practitioners we looked for when we were kids and we didn't find it, or when we were in certain situations, grieving, or whatever the state of affairs might be. Mm-hmm. And with our indigo workshops, they happen out, weekly, and then we do fun shops that are things like, they'll make dream catchers, or they'll make masks, or they'll identify their spirit animal, and they'll learn how to meditate. That's another thing with this. Meditation is a huge piece to this for me and anybody else that's attached to this, because if you kind of create this inner mindfulness, then you can have it be external as well. And it's not about a dogma. It's not about, preaching any one particular thing. It's about actually taking who you are and what whatever your source of creation is, and being able to honor it in that moment within yourself.
Oh, that sounds so good.
I know, right? That's your sound clip, everybody. And cut. Sorry. Part of conversation. Also,
you never have to apologize. First rule of my show is you never have to apologize. You can say whatever you want.
Careful.
Second rule is Yeah, well, I know I should be careful sometimes. That gets me in trouble sometimes. So going forward with the Indigo stuff, what do you see the future? I mean, I see them as bringers of a new dawn. I see them as coming in with the solutions to the problems on the planet.
Keep going.
I see them as a new wave of intelligence and consciousness. And as we get older, as we grow up and become the elders, it's our responsibility then to kind of mentor them and love and guide them and give them the support that perhaps, our generation didn't necessarily had, because we were kind of the breakthrough ones. We were the ones that came in like, this is what it is. And, nobody understands us. And we go through all the hardships and challenges so that when we get onto the other side of that, we then are able to say back to the kids, let me help you through this. Let me guide you. Let me, and you can do it in so many beautiful ways that it doesn't have to be invasive, gentle guiding, or it can be more of a side by side kind of thing. How do you see the new kids coming in? What do you think their mission is?
Yeah.
Why are they here?
Well, I think you bring up a great point in that, our generation has a role, and, and I don't want to call us like the Rosa Parks of, spiritualism, but we've kind of taken one on the chin because we didn't have these resources. And if that's what our role is to do that, then so be it. And I mean, think about that furthered evolution. I mean, you bring up a great point with this. 25 years ago, my mom went to yoga class and she had to whisper it, right? And now there's a yoga there's a yoga place on every other corner. And the way that that's, kind of evolved is that there was an acceptance of it, because then there was other backing to it. There was scientific backing to, yoga could help. And then, oh, by the way, they also tied money to it, because when you did yoga, you were more healthy, and then your healthcare costs would go down and your sick days would go down. By the way, do you see me working when I go into a company?
And then the corporate bottom line is improved.
Yeah, exactly.
Work population, you have a better bottom line. I don't know why they haven't gotten that sooner. I don't know why they haven't implemented more of a wellness, well-rounded type thing. And I hope that spreads across the planet. We actually see a new corporate paradigm be born.
Right.
I mean, how can we do this without it? How can we do this without it? I don't know how we can change so much about our structure, our matrix that we're currently in. And you hear a lot of language talk about,
right?
Well, it's this, it's that, very new agey, and the conceptual language that defines this is very difficult to put into an actual active structure that then literally does that. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face. We can label it however we want.
Right.
But if we don't have a working model that can then go in and show, and I think we have done enough work. We have done enough studies. We have done enough proof that we should be able to go in and change all of these things dynamically. And why they don't allow that to happen, I believe, is almost a kind of a conspiracy. It's like if you're not willing to let your workforce be empowered, I think, Brandon, honestly, I think it's because 90% of them will leave. I think that's what they're afraid of, is that 90% of that, or more, I'm just throwing a number out there, would leave.
Afraid of mutiny.
Say, what am I doing in this 4 foot by 4 foot cubicle? I mean, or, in a factory working, in dire conditions. What am I doing here?
Well,
everybody just walk out.
And the person in that seat, somewhere in their upbringing or background, feels that they need that badge of honor. And when you start to look at things like past lives or how the family grew up, it's just what you did. It is what it is. And, that sort of thing. But I think that you also bring up a very kind of important thing. And that's why I think that, quite frankly, I'm different. And I think that this movement, I say movement, but it's a vibration, really. It is different. And that is that the packaging is a little bit different when a guy in a suit coat comes in and says, okay, everybody, let's sit down and meditate. It's the rainbow and unicorn conversation that I always tend to have, right? I knew you would laugh at that one. But it's the rainbows and unicorns where everybody's like, oh, hey, I'm all mystical. And, you put a crystal on your forehead and you go, okay, everybody, let's do this. And it's, there was kind of that generation in between where you and I are and our parents, where it was almost like there needed to be a shock value to get it attention. And that was what, that's the hippie stigma. It's the, whatever the case may be, whatever you want to put onto it. But I think now what's kind of happening is it's no mistake that a well-educated person, a white male, middle-class upbringing, I had it made in the corporate world. I was making six figures. I was doing great. For all intents and purposes, I was winning the game, whatever that game was. For me to kind of have this awareness and understanding that I'm also honoring the intuitive that I am, to be able to say, hey, listen, I'm going to be able to change the world in this way instead of doing it in this other way. Now, what I think is really important with this, my vision with this has more to do with, you bring the parents in and you say, we have a responsibility to this next generation. I'm not fully understanding what this generation is going to be capable of. I'm not necessarily sure what the outcome is going to be, but I know it's really important that we give them the tools of coping, understanding, we build a community around it. We understand that we can still be professionals and productive and still honor our intuition. And we're creating our own standard. There's that phrase again. We're creating our own standard to say, this is what we look for. As much as 90% is, might be gone from the, entire lexicon of the corporate world, that 10% that will stay will be incredibly successful and actually show the way. Give me 10%, I'll work with that. That'll work for me.
Yeah, I think even the autism that's showing up in the human population as they grow up, as we see different ways of learning and different ways of understanding and perceiving the world manifesting within our kids, it's almost telling us now, get ready, because there's a wave coming in that's almost like even a different human being type genome. It's like we're kind of, you see back in history, ancient history shows us, whether you believe in the traditional ancient history or the non-traditional, they have these moments where it seems the human went through these leaps and bounds of evolution. Like suddenly our brain size goes from, this to this, or we do some kind of massive growth.
Right.
And whatever you believe is the reason for that, what it does show is that we do have these leaps in growth. And I think that we're kind of looking at that. And with the Zika virus coming up now, and we're seeing all these things, and no matter what you think about it or where it comes from, what it's showing us is that the human skull, the brain, everything about the human being can change at any time, even given an introduction of a virus, something very, very minute and small. Right. And we can be so affected by that. And it makes us humble. I think humanity has gotten a big head trip and a big ego. And overall, as a collective being, we forget often that, we're not the hottest thing in the universe necessarily.
Not yet. We got a few more inches to the sun.
We have a little bit of work to do because we don't cut it yet. But that said, we also have a lot of really, really great opportunities for growth and for connection. And, you have a set period of time here, and what you do with it, what your legacy is, what you leave behind, the lives that you affect, the love that you generate, the memories that you're part of. That's your legacy. That's what lives on. That's the whole point of even doing these, events or, things or trainings or radio shows or whatever you want to do, whatever you call it, whatever you put in that blank is something that gives an opportunity for one of those things, those beautiful moments to happen. And I love how you're doing it. I love how, we're all doing it. Everybody's doing their part. And these kids coming in really have a huge job set up because they have a planet to take care of, to understand, to find solutions. How do we know one of these kids aren't going to be one of the next world leaders, or people who are going to be in positions where they have a say and they have the power and they have the money and they have all of these opportunities? It's like, how do you uproot a patriarchal, competitive, corporate type mindset that has made certain families zillions of dollars and given the ability to do whatever? I don't know. I see an infiltration happening. I see an infiltration of consciousness heart energy. You cannot have a whole heart, and be in some of those places that asks that you don't care about other people, that you don't care even about yourself, because not caring about others is kind of a reflection of not caring about yourself. In a good way. I think we have to be responsible and accountable to ourselves and what we do and how we do it before we can even talk to other people about what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think a really good point that you're bringing up here too is you're identifying that, there's this generational unhappiness. There's the cycle that we're in, and the term conspiracy gets thrown around all the time, but we touched on it a couple of times here where you're giving yourself away to somebody else. In a nutshell, that's what's going on. And you're giving your happiness away for what you think is what you need to do. Mm-hmm. And there are moments where you say, you know what, I got to take this job because I got to pay the bills. Your situation might dictate that. However, there's a practical piece of this that I think that's, the bridge of practicality, I think at the end of the day is what I think our responsibility is that, to kind of destroy the stigmas that are attached to it, to be able to be practical in that, yes, Mr. Business Owner, there is a bottom line to this that will really help you. And, more importantly, the quality of life around it will actually be beneficial. And we're not going to throw around words like karma and, things that are in the rainbow and unicorn thing. I mean, they're important things and they're all things that we can debate. But in the business environment, they're not ready to hear those things. They're not ready to hear that they're, one of the biggest shams in corporate America is corporate giving. You recognize that, you want to love the NFL because they support breast cancer and they wear pink, for 4 games a year. Well, the reality is that everything that you buy and donate to them is actually a tax write-off for them. They've already committed their $500,000 or whatever the dollar amount is. And then what their hope is that you match that. So they actually donate $1 million and then their tax write-off becomes $1 million. And we're kind of taught in this society to think, oh, well, I'm supporting a good cause. Once you kind of get to the root pieces of that, they're not actually doing it for the good of the cause. They're doing it for the good of the dollar. There are equations, though, that you can work within to actually do things that are good for society or good for a cause and not necessarily have the seediness of direction. Like if it comes from the accounting department, they're probably not working with your soul on that one. It's just a given. And by the way, accountants, I love you. I made $1 million off of you. It's all good. But it's, the dynamic of what your role is and what your perspective is tends to be the type of thing that, that's where the source of that is. I mean, that's why like the HR clerk comes up with this great idea about how the corporate, their corporation can do something great. And then they talk to the HR manager and then the HR manager goes, I don't know how that's going to go. And then the HR manager talks to the HR director and the HR director goes, I'm not going to lose my job over this person. I mean, it might have been a great deal, but you've got the hierarchy of that. And it's always kind of pushing it down, and that's where great ideas don't happen. When I go in and I work with companies, and I have a team assembled around that, we actually talk about how a great idea can actually come to it. That maybe they didn't look at it the right way. Maybe they just looked at it from the burden of I sat in this room and they didn't like my last idea, so they're not going to like this idea, or whatever baggage that is. Mm-hmm. It's a way to kind of tie it off. In Buddhism, it's a very kind of clear understanding of tying the day off, they call it, where at the end of each day, in your mantra prayers, you're able to take everything that you've done and you say, okay, I've done the best that I can. I'm going to tie it off at the end of the day and put it on a shelf so it becomes a lesson. And then when I wake up the next morning or I head into dreamland and start my cycle again, I'm able to start it all over again and I have another opportunity. In business, the baggage, I've heard some people leave the job because, you know what, I had too many mediocre reviews and they just couldn't keep me anymore. And I'm like, that's not a reason to leave a company. Oh yeah, it is. In this company, that's the culture. If you're not going to go to the top, then you might as well be at the bottom. Okay, so
it's the pyramid structure. It's the pyramid structure. It's the compartmentalization. It's the cubicle mentality. It's the keep them, and it's a sad thing. And it's also very reflective of the integrity within the corporate structure as well. I'm not saying that all corporate structures are bad. I'm saying most of them just run on a model that's bad for the planet. That's where I come from. My perspective is that. Yeah. I think the structure itself is fundamentally corrupt. It's profit driven, and anything profit driven really, I have to question the ability to be relative to the rest of life and the circle of life. And I might not see it in my lifetime, but maybe in my kids' lifetime or somewhere down the line in my generations to come, they might see a kind of a restructuring of all of that. And I don't think that you can really save the things that need saving on this planet. And I'm not to do a doom and gloom thing, but you can't really move into the necessary mind frame without completely revamping that. So here we are setting, planting the seeds for that and raising the next generations to understand that. And you made a good point. I think we are also one of the last people, and I say this all the time, we're kind of the last people who remember the life before the internet or before cell phones and before the digital everything. And so when we have these kids growing up in that access with the ability to go anywhere they want to go online, technically, and be so connected that you can talk to somebody in another country on the other side of the planet in seconds, how is that going to shape and mold their viewpoint of the world? I think it automatically gives them a more global sense of being and placement. And in that, if we had that global placement structure within our mindset when we were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc., who knows what we would have done? I see a lot of solution, not necessarily in our generation, but in the generations coming up behind us. And I think we have a really strong responsibility to teach them, to offer our wisdom. We've lost the structure of elderhood in our society as well. I've worked with the Native Americans extensively for the last decade. And one of the things that they do better than us is the eldership. The elders are sacred. They are respected. There's protocol in dealing with elders. And I'm not just talking about the head shaman, the big chief. I'm talking about, people who are older than you, who have more life experience, who have more to offer from that. You look around today and the elderly are treated really bad. It's something that we need to deal with because we're headed that way. And everybody gets there eventually.
I mean, here's the fun part. And I'm totally going to go shameless plug on this because within Spirit Tree, what you just talked about with the elder components, I think is really, we're kind of embedding that. I mean, we're a healing energy incubator, which means that we're really developing something. We're developing healing energy. So, yes, we have classes, whatever they might be, whether it's meditation or Reiki or intuitive development, living, whatever, and combine it with the practical pieces of it. But we bring in people that are experienced, and the most important credential to me is life experience. I'm going to say that again. The most important credential to me is life experience. I went through this and I want to talk about it. And I want to be able to talk about it intelligently. And maybe I need to develop a platform. That's part of the incubator part of it. We have a couple of really gifted people that have all the intuitive tools to themselves. They just need to find their voice in all of this. And it takes working the clay, and it takes, whether it's doing readings or doing sessions or doing classes, they have to kind of get that experience. That's important. And then we'll have people that come in, that might be 60, 70 years old that have this wealth of knowledge that just needs to be handed to somebody. And I found myself saying in my journey, oh my gosh, I need to find out about this and I need to have this experience. And then I would turn around and I would say to the next person, oh my gosh, you have to do this. And they're like, oh my gosh, how do I get a hold of them? And now I'm grateful to be able to say, well, now we house them. They're coming here and these are the dates or whatever. This is the experience coming your way. But this is something that's a very important piece to this that you bring up, the internet generation that's coming in. Being intuitive is about living. It's not about sitting back and saying, I told you so. It's not about having the knowing and never doing. There's a reason why you have a throat chakra. There's a reason why, this cycle of what we had kind of talked about before with, you get that gut feeling, you get, the solar plexus get active, and then it has to move into action somewhere. Either the action is going to be absorbed by your heart, and it's either going to hurt in a lesson or, whatever the place may be, or it'll actually kind of move up to a place of action. Maybe it's saying something, maybe it's drawing a boundary, maybe it's finding your voice, maybe it's moving 1,000 miles away. Whatever the action is, that's the actual living piece of this. And I think that's what you're kind of talking about in terms of being able to pass it on to the next generation. You and I, at age 10 or 12, we were out catching frogs. Let's be honest. It was the best time of our life, right? Were you catching frogs? Please tell me you did.
Crayfish.
What's that?
Crayfish.
Crayfish, whatever it is, pick your poison, but you were going into it. Was there a creek that ran in your backyard?
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to break this into a reading, but we just had one. Anyways, you keep showing me this, that you were like diving in. Well, when I was growing up, I would head down. It was one of the tributaries that went down to the Hudson, and I would just, we'd sit there for hours, we'd dig into whatever, and we'd catch frogs and find snakes and, try and bring them home and scare our parents and little sisters. I mean, it's just, we enjoyed that part of it. But I think what was also beneficial was I was kind of learning what nature was going to show me. I was learning kind of where habitat kind of lived. And it's not just an appreciation. I mean, the appreciation kind of was, manifested around that, but it was in the mechanical pieces of it. It was understanding how things were going to live, and they're going to be under this rock. And then you begin to realize that people actually kind of mirrored that. They would kind of live under a rock if they were hiding or scared or whatever the case may be. And sometimes you got to go find them to help them.
Yeah, I mean, nature, one thing about the digital age is it's pulling kids away from nature. I mean, there's a difference between listening to a YouTube video of nature versus sitting outside in nature and listening to nature itself.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
The dynamic is becoming critical. I think we have to remember that nature is really important for us to teach our kids about. Taking them outside, letting them explore. Way too much fear incorporated in some of the parenting when it comes to nature. Oh, don't touch that. That's dirty. That's muddied. Mm-hmm. Let them play in the mud, for God's sake, please.
Run the hose and let them drink from it.
Women my age pay a fortune to go have mud masks put on their faces. Spas, for God's sake, right?
Come to my backyard. It's only $5.
Go in the puddles. I mean, go into the woods. Go. Let them do it. Let them explore. My kids went to the Montessori. Montessori method was what I chose to raise. We chose to raise our kids in, and it was the best decision we ever made. It was one of those things where the whole teaching dynamic is completely different than the traditional teaching dynamic. Kids are allowed to explore their gifts versus be tunneled and funneled into, nope, you're going to do this, this, and this. Changed their path completely.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that we invested into that, because it was one of the best things that we decided as parents to do. That said, they also had a very strong thread of allowing children to go. I mean, for lunch, they were allowed to go into the woods and build forts.
Yeah, I mean,
you see that happening in a public school where they have the cafeteria, then you go sit at your table and you have 20 minutes to eat and hurry up and throw your food out and get back to class. They actually were given a full hour, and which is rare in our school system here.
Yep.
And they were allowed to go out and go in the woods and I mean,
that's fantastic. And
nobody complained about ticks. Nobody did. Everybody just did a tick check, and that was it. And if you found one, you dealt with it. But you didn't go into the woods saying, "Oh my God, I'm so afraid. Don't touch anything."
Right.
That's where I think that's where it goes wrong. It goes wrong in teaching that nature is something to be afraid of. Right. And I have to say that mainstream media all around the world does the same thing. We're afraid of the weather, or, oh my God, we're getting a big storm. Go to the supermarket and buy everything. I think that's just a way for them to clean out what they haven't sold yet.
You got it.
They call the local weatherman and they go, "Hey, could you do a storm tonight? Because I got some bread on my shelf that I haven't sold. To get rid of it before
the over-hormoned milk is about to go bad. Can you please?
Well, that's all about, that's another story.
Yeah, I know. But But I think you bring up a whole other part of this too, where, like we've actually had challenges, and this is a real conversation internally. Like, we have a responsibility to be able to kind of do this and be fiscally sound. So we want to put together events that really kind of make sense, that, appeal to either an experience or speaks to a passion or, has those things. Well, I would love to be able to take everybody out and do a meditation in a big giant field and allow, right? Listen, it's coming, and all 5 of us are going to show up.
I'm doing that. That's what I've done. I think that's the whole night. That is the next level. That is the next level.
Well, here's the bridge gap. And again, I keep talking about how it kind of bridges things together. We're actually renting out a planetarium to be able to do a nighttime meditation. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be a great bridge gap. It's going to be the type of thing that, even the parents that are afraid of the ticks and that sort of thing are still going to kind of come to this. So they've got to deal with their fear. And again, you brought up 2 very important things again. 2 of the enemies of the empath. First one is fear, and then the other one is the way it always is. Like, the way it is 20 minutes for lunch, not 1 hour. So they're overcoming that. And then the fear aspect of it, everything from the weather and, to the ticks. But, we try and find challenging things that really kind of speak to an overarching topic, which is your relationship with nature. We're able to do that, but we're going to do it in a planetarium so we can, first of all, so we can sell seats and kind of turn it into an event. But then the other piece of it is to be able to, begin to bridge that as in, if somebody ever did this, and we hear that all the time, and the team and I looked at each other and said, we have to do this. Let's figure out a way. Believe it or not, the planetarium was actually very reluctant. I mean, there are 4, well, they're actually a nonprofit, but when they heard this idea, they were kind of like, I'm sorry, you want to do what? And I said, yeah, I'm going to need your microphone, and I'm going to need somebody to click play, and I'm going to need somebody to just kind of light the sky. And I go, you really don't have to do too much. Like, this will be a guided meditation. We'll be in the space for a little over an hour. We'll bring them in. The meditation will be about 30, 40 minutes. And then when they come out and they come down, let's kind of have, cookies and water, that sort of thing. And they had to wrap their head around this. I mean, they really did. They're like, we never had anything like this. And I said, well, then let's book this one, and we'll do another one, in the fall when the weather turns again. And hopefully somewhere in between we do something outside. And that's, that's our challenge. That's kind of what fuels our creativity to be able to come up with new ideas with this. Like, how do we bridge this? What are the, we see point A and we see point C, like what's the B in between? That's what I think my work is.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, the Love Breathe Earth platform that I founded a couple years ago, we're actually taking that to that level now, where we're taking people literally out into the woods to these different places, and teaching them how to do that, to meditate with nature, to put them into a different state of awareness, and what to do when you're in that, so that you can maximize your relationship with nature there, and start to practice and work on that to restructure it. I've been doing that for a while, and I can't tell you how much it's made a difference in my life. And everybody who's done it also, as an effect of me doing it, people I talk to about it or teach, workshops on, and I mean, they come back and they always say that there's a shift in their perspective. Clearly, it's almost like it almost is like, and if I dare I describe it like this, but it's almost like an instantaneous breakdown of the false matrix. It's like they've created a false matrix, and nature somehow brings them back to that because of the frequency. The Earth frequency is not like a computer frequency. Yep. If you're in a building all day and you're in front of a computer, or you're in your house you're on your cell phone like this all day. I mean, and maybe you're doing really important things, and that's fine. But you're exposed to a different frequency, a different electromagnetic frequency. And when you go back to nature, you get out of that man-made, electric frequency, and you get back into that the real frequency, and your body adjusts. You have shifts in your chemical processes. The plants can tell. It's really a profound structure, and I can't wait to teach more about that this year. And you and I, of course, will be talking about that as well.
I see a partnership forming.
I only work with co-creative people.
I know, and that's the interesting piece of this too. Like you just used two key words that let me know that this conversation could keep going. You use the words perspective, and you use the words breakdown and breakthrough. Actually, you went three of the four for me, and it's. For me, that's actually a signal, like within my own standard, like I don't move forward unless I hear things that, I used to put it on myself and put it on my own intuition and go, come on, intuition, am I supposed to do this? Is this a good thing? And what I wouldn't do though is, have the art piece of it really kind of be the exchange. You just said some very incredibly key things for me to say, okay, let's keep going. If you hadn't said those things, I would have said, okay, Hillary, let me know how it goes. But because you said that, because you said that, that is a very key thing. And that's actually, in a nutshell, what I think everybody just watched, and I hope you rewind it and listen to it, is essentially what you did is you unlocked my intuition to say, that's something. Pay attention to that. I still don't know where it's going to lead to. That's where we, sometimes make mistakes, but we know to procead. And that's where the action.
I think that's the art of conversation, Brandon. I mean, you and I know each other before we did the radio show. I've
right.
had lunch with you. We've worked on some projects together. There's an art of conversation to that. It's like you have inspired me to think. And then I'm not afraid to share. So therefore, just I would let it come out.
Right.
You are not afraid to receive. So you receive the information and go, oh, ding, ding, ding. And then you're inspired and then you talk. And that's where the co-creative weaving happens.
Yeah.
Instead of it being a competitive, well, I know more or I'm right and you know more. It's not a debate. There's a difference between debating and talking about things to be right or to prove right, or in a closed down conversation, you don't get that same kind of ping pong back and forth type thing. And the ping pong isn't just well, here's this. What are you going to do with it? Let's watch what Brandon does. Brandon, what's your response? No, it's an authentic exchange back and forth. I'm listening. I'm present. You are listening, you're present, and then the ideas that come out of all of that can be nothing but great, wonderful things. No matter what we do with them or don't do with them, they present themselves and they say, hey, ding, ding, ding. And then maybe we go, well, let's talk about that at a later point. Or remember when we talked about this, and then it continues on in that way. Or you go have a conversation with somebody else and those key words pop, pop, pop. And you are guided on a path a little bit further down this way, where you need to go explore something or I need to go explore something. It's not about owning. This is something I want to share with you. I don't feel this with you. And I think that's why I'm so comfortable with you, is because there's never a topic of, well, that's mine.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad we didn't meet until later.
Your idea. That's my idea, and that therefore I don't like you now because I'm jealous and concerned and worried and mad and it just breaks down the whole thing. The blocks go up and it's a done deal. The guillotine comes down and cuts the head off of the art of conversation.
And it's funny. I learned some of those lessons. I think I kind of came into this eyes wide open and a little skeptical about how. The intuitive business, whether you want to carry mediumship or psychic or, whatever you want to call yourself. I'm going to say something brutally honest. It is the most cutthroat business I've ever seen, and I have swam with the sharks. I have never seen more insecure people that are trying to deliver healing than I had ever seen, and it shocked me. I have to tell you, it was kind of like once I saw the wizard behind the curtain, I said, you're facilitating great healing. And I'm not disparaging anybody's work here because it was amazing. Like in the trenches, in those readings, they were providing amazing things. And then when you would kind of want to garner some of that and they would yell at you and say, well, that's my coattails that you're trying to ride. No, I'm trying to learn. I don't have, a male role model that I can go to and say, hey, I want to be like you. In the psychic and intuitive world, I mean, primarily what I was faced with is seeing either, the psychic housewives, or I was seeing, the flamboyant gay male. I mean, those. I'm going to
stop you there for a second. Hold that thought. Psychic Housewives is the name of a company of one of my very, very good friends. We love you, Lorraine. This is not about you. I just have to.
Oh my gosh. No. No. But they're.
I know. I'm just saying that.
I think I read that because it was planted on my feed the other day, and I'm like, oh, that's a good one. I have to flag that and read it later. But no, and I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I'm actually honoring it because they're actually typifying what they could see out there. And congratulations for them for creating a foundation to say this is who we are. Yeah. And point positive, it actually proves my point. I'm not saying it as a negative thing, but as a guy kind of coming into this, they wouldn't hire me. They wouldn't say, hey, Brandon, come be a psychic housewife. That's fair. I don't fit that model. But for me, that also kind of fueled me to be able to kind of say, I need to kind of create this the way I need to create it. That's my point to this. Thank goodness that's there, because if not, I wouldn't have learned from it to create what I needed to out of this. Yeah. And the spirit tree idea is a very big, from the outside, it's tough to describe. I say this all the time. My day and week is half of the time I'm doing the work, and the other half of the time I'm explaining what I do, because it's not a one-word answer, and that's okay. I've taken on that burden, and I'm happy with it. I actually think it's a really positive thing, because if you're going to create change, you have to create the new definition, and that's what I think I'm doing pretty regularly.
Yeah, I think you'll refine that too as you go. I mean, I see that happening within, when I look at you and I say, yeah, I don't really see a problem defining what you do or a broad type thing. I see more of a need to refine in some senses, but whatever that means is something totally for you, and it's not necessarily something that I can see, but
and what about this little inspiration that just hit me? What if we created a team that went into companies and we called them the psychic suits? And and stereotypically it's a bunch of male energy people, not male or female, but male energy driven, to be able to kind of come in and do intuitive work, so that then we could speak the bottom line and then have them.
It's like you would have all of these intuitive people walk in there and say, "Oh my God, what a cesspool! I have to clean this up," and then everybody would have to go, "Oh wow!" They'd have to be accountable, and they'd have to own the stuff they're doing and how they treat people. I mean, I just think that there's a whole nother show there. I mean, we could talk about that for a long period of time. You should write a book on that, actually, because you have so much insight.
You should say that.
I see that as a necessary thing. We were talking about my work with John Perkins earlier, and I see his work as necessary. I mean, I've been doing radio for 11 years. I started in 2005, on and off different networks and so on. And so I've seen behind the scenes, and behind the scenes can be pretty ugly, not only in the radio industry, but also with the guest industry. And you go into different behind the scenes with publishers and publicists and personalities. And, the bigger you are, the harder you fall kind of thing. And it's just kind of like, I don't know. It needs a little cleaning, it needs a little dusting, and a little bit of Pine Sol or something. Yeah. And I think your psychic suit idea would be more of a conscious cleanup crew than anything else. Because I like I said, I stick. It's my story. I'm sticking to it. I really believe that one of the things we have to do at some point is face what we're dealing with within the mindset of the corporate world, because big industry runs the world. Not necessarily, and you could blame it on one family or a family over here, or you could go prove this or that. But what it comes down to is the big industry owns the world. The laws are set up to protect it. You get into all of that, and then it goes back to the David and Goliath thing. Well, what can I do? And this is what I tell people, Brandon. I tell people you can do your own cleanup crew within, and you can change the things that you have to change about your life to make yourself that. And then when you've learned how to do that, you do it with your biological family. Okay. It's not about going out and getting a bunch of groupies or a bunch of followers who are going to just, pay you money and do whatever you say. You need you need the hard, you need the challenging relationships. You need the one family member that you don't talk to anymore because you hate them so much, or they hate you.
There's value there.
If you can go and you can settle up that with that person, You have basically moved mountains, and that's the beginning. The microcosmic and the macrocosmic are no different. They are completely the same. So when personal inner reflective work is done, you're moving something over there that's necessary, and that's how you do it. It's not about getting mad and going in and doing things that are, crazy and destructive. It's about yourself taking on the role of being accountable and responsible and owning your own stuff. And there is no such thing as perfect. Anybody who tells me that they're perfect and they have no problems, I'm like,
I once sat. I once sat next to somebody that said, I have no blocks whatsoever. And I kind of smiled and said, okay, that's, you're in process. But I think, some of the things that you said, Brandon 1.0 might have been like, well, that's just the way it is. That's what, the way that, you have to be. This is, that you're simply not facing reality and voting Republican and all the crap that, goes along with that mindset. And then
speaking of politics,
I knew it. Yeah.
You're not going to get away from this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what you think about this Trump-Hillary thing. What do you think's going on with all this? How do you see it from an intuitive, empathic male perspective?
Which part do you want me to go to? Yeah, do you want me to kind of tackle this? Well, I don't see how, from an intuitive standpoint, I don't see how somebody can skate through as many hoops and fire rings as Hillary has and not be kind of a preordained choice.
Her husband was president. This is like a monarchy.
It's kind of a no-brainer.
Are the only ones who can get they tell kids in school you can be president someday. That's a lie, Brandon.
I know it is, because I looked into it.
Clinton or a Bush, or you have to be one of the families now. That's what it's come down to. That's what
and what's also kind of interesting, and then you also bring up the family, and then you're like, well, Barack Obama, yeah, he's part of the family. I can't remember the exact name of the person, but there was a sixth grader that figured out that all of the presidents except for one traced back, they were all related.
Yeah. That's been big in the conspiracy world for a long time. They've had that information out for a long time. It's just that most people don't know it, or they don't believe it when they hear it, because they hear conspiracy and they automatically shut it down. Shut it down because they hear the C word, Yeah,
well, and it's also, in conspiracy theory, of course, was the brainchild of the FBI to try and cover up, all their other stuff. But it's a whole other story. But on the other side of the coin, and I'm going to circle back around with Bernie here in a second, but you got the dynamic of what's going on the Republican side of it, where, even within their own party, when you listen to any of the conservative radio, or, because that's really their voice primarily, they were looking at Cruz Rubio for a good long time. They were looking at, okay, what's our strategy here? We might as well make it a dual ticket. And, that kind of insider piece of it. Here comes Trump, who, by the way, has never really been a friend of the Republicans for a long time. He's probably been more of a player to government handout than anyone else in the face of the world. And, his xenophobic angles and all of these things are just, it's putrid at its best, and it's fear-mongering. Oh, by the way, remember what are the things that are the enemy of the empath?
Fear.
Yeah, the way it is a two-party system. That's why so many intuitives just check out of this. We just kind of shrug our shoulders and say, I actually think, and this makes me incredibly un-American because I was told I needed to be American and vote. The declining number of people that are voting is actually a positive thing. It's actually, to me, in terms of, dynamic change long term, the fact that you think that you have this kind of intrinsic thing of, when I click the button, then it goes to whatever. There's so much web, a shell game, I want to call it, between all of that, between reporting numbers and hanging chads and all that other stuff. It's a consistent value within that. And then you have somebody come along like Bernie that just kind of basically says, let's be nice to each other. Let's fit within a model that's able to say, listen, we will protect our borders and we will take care of our people. And by the way, we'll stop, this war thing doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, that's, they got JFK taken out. So why wouldn't it get Bernie, taken out early in a conversation? And I'm not saying that's where this is going for him, but he's not going to get the support of a big ticket just because of that thing, because it doesn't speak to whatever agenda or the business as usual, the way it always is. We're a warlike country. 87% of our history we've been at war. I mean, that's just the way that we are. So intuitively, I see somebody like Bernie speak and I go, that's the voice that we are all drawn to, because we're done with it. I mean, I don't even know the statistical number anymore. I've given up following it. But you
can't follow it. Who are these polls? I never get asked to be in a poll. I don't know anyone who ever gets asked to be in a poll.
But
these poll numbers come up every night on the national news, and I'm like, where did they come from? They don't even they give some little random source of like the person who put, the company or whatever that put together the poll. Yep. But the numbers, I mean, people just like, oh yeah, 57% said. I'm like, who's the 57%? Nobody even asked. I actually requested an interview with Bernie Sanders. I went to his camp and talked to his media people. I was too small to give him an interview. I didn't have the number.
You know what? I'll call him. Okay.
But, he's a busy guy. He's got lots going on. I'm like, well, that's great. But see, here's my question. They had to do with GMOs. It's great that you want to do all these wonderful things, but I haven't heard one candidate talk about labeling GMOs, because I don't know about Bernie Sanders, but the rest of them are all in Monsanto's pocket. Yep. So there were these fundamental things, and this kind of spurred a conversation with somebody, and I was invited, and this is new. Nobody knows this, Brandon. This is being announced for the first time tonight. I haven't said a single drop of this anywhere.
Drum roll.
I can't do that with my mouth. Okay. The drum roll. I will be hosting starting this week, starting soon, a couple days. I will be hosting a new political show. I'm going into politics. In a different way. I'm going into politics as a host of a show put together by a team where I get to ask the questions. I get 15-minute segments with different political outcrops, people within the political realm, politicians themselves, because I want to know why we're really not listened to, why the vaccine issue is ignored, even though, society says one thing over here. Well, now we have all these other studies and independent things and opinions, etc., saying something different. Why we're not being, I want to give my voice now, not to just talking about healing information or exposing information. I want to talk about other things that have to do with what's going on. And I feel that to be me and to be who I am, to go into that might be a curious, interesting thing to see. Absolutely. I might really hate it, but I might also be able to be good and effective.
Right.
And being able to bring an opinion, because I have enough background in a lot of varied different information backgrounds. Right. Yeah.
Well, you might need to shower after.
Would be perfect. I mean, they liked me. They thought I'd be good for the hosting job. So I said, okay, fine. I'll give it a shot. But I'm only doing it because it's 15-minute segments, because I'm writing 2 books, and I got to kind of cut back on some of the things I'm doing.
Sure. And but here's where I think that there's like an important voice to all of this. I think that there's, when you bring up the political thing, whatever that structure is, whatever side of the aisle you feel you need to be on, any of that, it's the polarizing effect of the fear. You've got one side of the aisle that is choosing either one. I don't care, insert candidate here, but they're choosing that person because they're afraid of what the other person would do. They're actually not making a choice. They're actually making...
It's a response.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fight or flight. So, they're voting for Trump not because they're a xenophobic, blowhard, and they've always been a fan of his business dealings. They're voting for them because they're afraid of what Hillary Clinton might do to the country. Here's
my thought on Trump. Trump is like a Trump card, okay? He's he's going into this, interesting position where I believe Hillary is going to win over Bernie. And it's not because I think Hillary is a better person. I think that she's so ingrained in the establishment and she's got so much money. Now, this new indictment thing where they've just given immunity to the man who built her server, and now everybody's all up and, oh my gosh, it's all going to be exposed. Hillary's going to be exposed. Oh, I mean, give me a break.
She has been exposed already.
She's handled so many scandals across the way. That woman is like a tough skin. She's very short. I saw her in London once. I was staying in the same hotel, and all of a sudden the lobby filled up with all these like security-looking men. I'm like, what's going on? And you see this little head going like this across the court.
Oh, no.
I'm like, what is that? Who is that? Because I'm very tall, so I look over there. And I'm like, it's Hillary Clinton. What the heck?
Yeah.
I didn't even know she was staying there.
Napoleon. Yeah. Wait, hold on a second. I'm channeling for just a second. Vince Foster says she's going to win. I don't know. She always gets her way.
Well, this is why I think she will, Brandon, because Trump and her family have very, very, very tight business ties. There's some really questionable business associations between the two families. I think Trump is just going in it for to have a field day. He gets exposure no matter what happens. He gets to say whatever he wants. People are like, wow, did he really just say that? And even though they hate him, they love him. Why? Because we're bred to be a gossip-centered.
Of course.
Home. You turn on the TV in any American home, maybe even around the world, but especially in America, you are just dumped with all kinds of superficial garbage, crap. Well, that just saturates your being, and then everybody goes, I don't like that, but I can't turn it off because I'm so addicted to the gossip and I just can't stop it. And then they go into their lives.
Hillary, we finally got a Kardashian on the ticket. We got a Kardashian on the ticket.
If Kanye West ever runs for president like he says he is, I am moving myself and my family out of this country.
Can I quote you on that?
Yes.
Can I quote you on that? Okay. All right.
I am moving out of this country. I refuse to be part of that. I think that's disgusting.
Well, as somebody that plays music, I'm going to go ahead and say that he doesn't have my support. But
he would be a trump card. He would be a trump card because he would go into the publicity, throw it all off, shake things up. Now, if Trump wins the Republican ticket and he becomes the candidate, and then Hillary becomes candidates, Hillary and Trump, everybody's going to flock to Hillary that doesn't like Trump. Trump might have numbers. He might have money. He's got the experience. I don't know. Part of me is kind of conflicted because I'm like, well, maybe he's got enough sense into how to turn some things around. But there's kind of a big question mark factor with him.
How about this, though?
I don't know if Bernie is really tough enough to handle some of the military-industrial complex problems, challenges, and reins and controls that are definitely on the presidential candidate. The president is a puppet, and he's not the one at the top. Everybody thinks, oh, you're the one at the top. You can make all the decisions. If Bernie gets into office, I guarantee you what's going to happen is he's got all these great ideas and all these great ideals. Yep. But he's going to have a hard time implementing them because there's so many ways for that to shut a president down who wants to do that. Hillary knows how to play the game, so she may go in there and play the game well, but she's using the I'm the first woman ticket. I think that's appalling. I just think it's disgusting. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean that a woman has to vote for you because you're a woman.
Yeah, let me ask you that. Let me ask you this, and I think that's also... I see that where, we talk about all of these things where, we're coming off of our first Black president, where we can, begin to kind of say, and again, conspiracy stuff aside, content of our character, not the color of our skin. And then you have her come up that says, oh my gosh, first woman and first everything else. I mean, you see these videos that are posted and saying, this girl is really good. Can you believe that this girl did? And it's so demeaning. It's so negative and all of this. But I don't want to forget this thing that I wanted to ask you. What if Bernie Sanders kind of had a Ross Perot effect? What if he loses the nomination and says, I'm still throwing my hat into the ring. I've got enough independent, backing with all of this. What kind of a monkey wrench do you think he could throw into that, Trump Hillary?
It's the year of the monkey, Brandon.
Monkey wrench.
No more.
Sometimes I say things for you, right?
It's here's the deal. I mean, we have monkey business going on in the United States. The American government is one of the biggest bullies on the planet.
Keep going.
We are the reason why there is so many problems in the rest of the world. I mean, we're like the hired henchmen. Israel wants to turn the Middle East into one giant country for itself. So it's creating all of this havoc and chaos. The United States comes in and says, okay, we'll show it on our media. We'll make up all these stories. We'll go in with our drones and our military. We're at war for a decade. We're still in Afghanistan. And 9/11 was how many years ago? Yeah. So we have a lot of, it's an entangled mess.
Well,
Donald Trump comes along. Oh, I'll make it worse. I'll build a wall between the United States and Mexico. I'll go in and shoot them all. We should export all Muslims out of the country. I mean, he's saying things that are crazy and insane. Completely, I mean, completely. When it comes down to the logistics of that, we're talking Nazi Germany again, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's almost like he does it as a gaslighting effect to be like, I'm going to say this, light it all up, and then everybody's going to respond to it. Let's watch the fallout. He goes and makes more billions of dollars because he's still relative. He's still in the public eye. His companies are still relative, even more so now because he's running for president and he might win. So if he might win, all his business interests are going, oh, yeah, I'm a Donald supporter. Yeah. Me. Remember me? Because now, even though I haven't contributed to your contribution, I haven't contributed to your campaign, there's no strings, so he says. There are other strings because in the corporate world, as you know well, the corporate world creates a kind of entanglement and strings that, the politicians, I think, mimic in some way, but nothing really talks about it. So let's say Donald just goes ahead and falls out of the campaign and Hillary goes, me, I'm the winner. Thank you. I'm the first woman president. Ooh, I've waited all my time for this. Bill Clinton now becomes what? The first man? First lady man? What is his role? He's already done it. I mean, why do we have the Bush family running, 3 members of their family over how many generations? It's disgusting. Ronald Reagan was an actor. This is what people come to me and say, well, Ronald Reagan was great. He was an actor in Hollywood.
Yeah.
He was an actor in Hollywood. He made it to the president. He acted his way through the presidency. He was told what to say. He was molded and mentored to be who he was by special interests and all these other things. The corporations loved him because he was easy to manipulate.
He was able to present well because he had those refined acting skills. I've seen a couple of videos where, it was a 1980 debate, and it was George Bush and Ronald Reagan, and George Bush actually had more valid standpoint in what he was saying, but because he stuttered and stammered, and Ronald Reagan came in and just gave a very canned, refined answer. That's how they redefined politics, because it was how it needed to be delivered, just like JFK did against Nixon. He looked better in the suit, so it worked better and it played better in the format.
Yeah, maybe I'm a good person to host this new show, because here's the thing, it lights me up. I get very
listen, I help people in their life path, and sometimes it helps them kind of, rule things in or rule things out. So whichever way you want to go with this, it's all good. But I think it's also but I think it's fully applicable to talk about politics, because, the politics of the workplace kind of makes sense. And the politics of, even when you're becoming, I'm even talking about how, when I was developing and I was kind of trying to find my own voice, I ran into politics. I ran into, that sort of mindset where, the games that people play and the insecurities, we're just mirroring it on a different level. And that's the stuff we have to start ignoring. It's like, I'm no less of an American because I think that our process is broken. I'm actually more of an American because I think we can actually do better. I don't think that we should be kind of stuck with how we're doing things for a long time. And how I want to approach that is by doing things like working with individuals, helping indigos kind of become who they're meant to be as adults, and helping the adults and the parents kind of find their own voice and find their passion and find their happiness. And if companies are willing to make the change and start it from the top and all that good stuff that has to go along with change, I'm more than happy to help facilitate it. But I say this in everything: I can't want it more than you do. And We have a system right now that doesn't want change. It's built up for all the reasons that you're saying, and the David and Goliath thing comes up, where you then teach things like protections, and you teach things like, the coping mechanism of when it gets to be too much, this is the other stuff that you do. And I think at the end of the day, the things that I do is, it is working against the system that doesn't work. It is working against the monetary value that isn't real. I mean, we have fiat money. It's not based on anything. It's based on the
we have the Bitcoin now. That'll be taking over the world soon. And I've made that prediction. You've seen it right here on CCN. The Bitcoin will take over the world. The Bitcoin, the digital currency, will be the future. I've seen it. It's just, I know it's coming. Okay, here's a question for you. We're kind of rounding out to the end of our 2 hours.
And you were going to cut me short.
Well, it's more of a comment on the political discussion. Okay, so politics isn't spiritual, therefore I don't participate. What do you say to that?
I say that you still have value within the local government because, on the grander scale, we never touch the president. We may never see the White House. We may never even go to Washington, D.C. I live just outside of Albany, and I may be able to go to, the state capitol, and I kind of actually personally know some of the local legislatures. So at that level, I think I kind of have influence and value. On my city level, I definitely have value. I know them. I grew up with them. They see me in the store and they know my story, and they know, they're like, oh, he does that thing, and it's like, okay, all right, that's fine. If that's where they're at right now, so be it. But to me, it's, there is value in this. My prediction in all of that is that local government is going to become very strong again. Based on what you're saying, too, I think that the dollar is just, I don't want to say it's going to be not valuable, but it's clearly going in the direction of just being so diluted that local government will really kind of be able to kind of help run the roost. And again, I don't want to go conspiracy on this with, all the things of fallout and all that other stuff, but I still look at it as the positive side of things because that's how I'm built. I'm kind of programmed to look at it from the positive perspective. I think that the power of the people kind of can come back. I think you have to kind of pay attention to it. To get riled up about, Clinton versus Trump and Bernie and whoever, I think that's kind of just fun fodder that, plays with your mind, and I can give you all the reasons why that doesn't work. But to get involved with the local piece of it, the parts that you have impact. And again, like I said, about the Wall Street, the Occupy Wall Street piece of it, I found value out of that because I figured instead of doing the sit-in, I wanted to get inside. I wanted to change that stuff on the inside.
It was interesting when I went down to Wall Street. When I went down to Wall Street, I was actually there with a friend of mine who was visiting from Spain at the time. And so his perspective of what we were doing here in New York City was interesting because just the timing of everything. The main feel when I walked through that was, this is like a hippie sit-in flower child type thing. And it was kind of like, well, I get that, but here's the thing. If you can't take it to another level of organizing a structure out of that, then all you really are is being allowed to sit there and do your hippie thing and protest in a way until you're done, and you're tolerated to a certain extent because it's, and then once you're done and you move out of there, it's forgotten about. I mean, how many people really even talk about that anymore? It's like, it happened. I saw it firsthand. It was interesting to see for sure. The energy was definitely not what I expected, seeing what I saw on TV and so on and so forth. So my point of telling you that is, and for everybody watching this, is it's not always what you think unless you're there to see it firsthand. It's like we got to be really careful about perception, what we're doing information-wise, because you can be so manipulated with just a soundbite or a little clip of something or a phrase. It's kind of like people. People can say one little thing about a person, and it spreads like wildfire, and it may not even be true, and everybody goes, "Oh my God!"
Well,
it's dangerous to do that. It's dangerous to do that. So wrapping it up, Brandon, what do you got coming up? What do people need to know about you? Where can they find you? They want to talk to you more, talk to you about your great things that you have offering.
Sure. Well, You can get in contact. You can get in contact with me at spiritreeconnections.com. Reach out there on the contact page. For me, I have a couple of series coming up. I have the intuitive living. Within the group, though, we have ongoing things like youth meditation. We have some great practitioners that are coming in. We have a divine healer. Her name is Jamie Miller. She's fantastic. She's actually she's learned under Franciscan friars. She's fantastic in every way. We have Leah Bowden coming in. I have a guest speaker series coming up with David Wilson. He's actually a screenwriter. And we're going to do a conversation about his passion, about how he had his movie made. He had a very big backer come in and had it produced by C. Thomas Howell, and how, all of the things that he never gave up on his passion, and he stayed with it, and, balanced the 9-to-5 job. And his story is just fun, and he and I play well together. So we have that coming up. We're going to be at Over It Media in Albany. And that's actually going to the results of that will be on our YouTube channel. So we've got a lot of things. We're in the storming phase where we're really kind of putting together new ideas and products. We're finding a new space where we can deliver much more to many more. So it's, for us with Spirit Tree Connections and spiritreeconnections.com, we're finding new ways. I also have a meditation podcast that you can sign up for. That's going to be out in a couple of weeks, and it'll be a weekly podcast. It's about a 10-minute guided meditation. You'll be able to hear it and tap into it anytime you want. It's a good. It's tools that I looked for when I was developing, and that's the primer behind all of this. And I can't thank you enough for being part of it, and also recognizing it for what it is, because it's kind of you talk about this generational thing. You've been doing this for 10 years. It took me 10 years to figure it out, and now it's kind of go time with it. So we stand. You're looking for people to stand on your shoulders now, and we kind of make the promise to that generation, that was before us. Hey, listen, we're developing people. We're letting them come out of their shell. We're helping them find themselves in this.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time. Imagine that.
Look at that.
Thanks, Brandon, so much for being here. Everybody, you're listening to Yin Radio TV. I'm your host, Hillary Raimo. And until next time, namaste.